How's it going? I have no idea if the mic's on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Okay, we'll go from there. All right, I'm James Snell. Going to talk about working on Node Core. When I put the slides together, I actually forgot what the title was in the thing, so I typically don't follow slides very well anyways. So you can pay attention to those if you want. Who am I? I am an open source architect for near time, which is fun. I just get to do open source all the time. I've been doing this for 20 years. I was with IBM for 16 years before moving over to Nearform. Actively contributing to Node since January 2015. And just because I want to embarrass him, my son is right here. He's 12 years old. This is Aaron. He's working on teaching himself his 4th programming language in a year and a half. So very cool. And he's got the Node shirt on, so even though he's coding in C# right now. Okay, so how I got started with, that was weird. How I got started with, come on. Get back there, get back. Technology. Here we go. How I got started with Node Core, take 1. This was 2012, I think. I was doing some work with IETF, HP standards. Kind of my background, open standards, HP, HP2, those kinds of things. I was doing some prototyping. And, oh my gosh, this thing is fun. Hello. There we go. This is kind of like my first experience with Node. I found a bug. It didn't work too well. And I was told when I reported it that I didn't know how this kind of code worked. It wasn't exactly a great first experience working with a brand new open source project to be told that something that I had had years of experience working in that I didn't know how it worked, right? So I was like this. I submitted a PR, walked away from the project, didn't want anything to do with it, right? I was done. This Node thing was, back then there was some community issues, right? Which brings me to rule number 1. Don't make assumptions. Your assumptions are typically wrong, especially when they're about people and what they may know, right? And this was a big problem with Node when I first got involved, is there were a lot of assumptions being made about what people could contribute and what value there was to contribute. And that ended up being a big problem. So, fast forward a couple years, how I got started with Node, take 2, how I got re-involved with the project. At that time, I was working for IBM. I was working for IBM for about 16 years doing open standards stuff. They found out that I did this Node thing once, which was this PR that fixed this bug. They decided that they wanted to use Node. My manager was like, hey, didn't you do something with Node once? I'm like, and right about that time, IOJS happened. That's the fork that was caused by the community issues. IBM wanted to invest in the platform, but did not want to do so as long as there was this huge divide that was threatening the project. So they specifically asked me to get involved and help fix it. This was my reaction. No, I don't want to do this. Actually, though, after getting into a couple of months, I was pleasantly surprised. The contributors to the project, the core contributors, really did care about the community. That's why they went off and formed IOJS, right? IOJS was one of these things, people were looking at it like it was an existential crisis for Node, but it was actually the best thing to ever happen to Node, right? It was a catalyst for what has since become, and we'll show some numbers here in a little bit, the largest period of active growth and activity in the project's history over the past couple of years. So rule number 2, don't ignore your contributors or your community. Super, super critical. Without them, your project's not viable. It doesn't matter how good your code is. It doesn't matter how good your project is. It doesn't even matter how good of a process you have. If you're ignoring your users and ignoring your contributors, it's going to fail. All right, so this was a key lesson. So what did I do first? How I got started with Node, like actually getting engaged with the project, right? I spent 3 months doing nothing but triaging issues. The issue tracker at that point had thousands of open issues. Within 3 months, I closed over 1,000 stale ones that were just nobody had bothered going back and cleaning up. During that time, I was learning about the project, I was learning about the code, I was learning about the people, most importantly, learning about the people. Where they come from, going back to rule number 1, don't make assumptions. Rather than assuming I knew who these people are and who these contributors were, I took the time to actually get to know them personally. So 3 months in a brand new open source project, I did not touch a single line of code. All right, I went through issues. I went through people. I reached out and I talked to them, sent emails, had email chats with them. I talked on IRC, picked up the phone. I actually took time to learn who was involved in the project, right? And from there we began to build a better process for the project so it would actually succeed. So, rule number 3, the people are the most important part of any software project. Never ever forget that. It doesn't matter if it's an open source project, it doesn't matter if it's a company, right? Closed source. The people involved in building it are the most important thing, not the software, okay? If there's anything else that you take away from this talk, that's it right there, okay? So fast forward 3 years. What have I been doing? I am a member of the technical steering committee. That's kind of the governing body for the Node technical project. I served on the Node Foundation board of directors as the TSC chair, or TSC director. I've been the release manager for every Node release since 4, and Tuesday we just had Node 10 go out. Fantastic. Very fun, but the scary thing is right now we have 5 supported major versions of Node. So it's 4, 6, 8, 9, and 10, all supported for the next couple of days. 4 is going to drop off. Anybody still using Node 4? I'm going to publicly shame you if you are. So. Okay.
Soon. We're on 0.10.
Oh. All right. You should be on Node 8. We'll get you there. We'll get you there. In 4 days or 3 days, Node 4 is going to no longer be supported, which is rather scary. That was like, the first major version of Node after we launched the foundation was Node 4, and it's already reached its end of life, which is, kind of amazing. And the fact that we are on 10 is pretty cool. But I've been the release manager for every one of those major releases. I also introduced HV2, the WWG URL parser, new buffer constructors, text decoder, a significant number of the new APIs and new capabilities in Node I've been directly involved with. The reason I point that out is it's only been 3 years. Right. Prior to January 1st, 2015, my only experience with Node was opening that one pull request that pissed me off and I didn't want to contribute anymore. Right? So in 3 years, I've gone from no experience to helping lead the project. And that can be any one of you. Can be involved in whatever open source project you want to get involved with, whether it's Node or anything else. Right? All it takes is that commitment to get started and commit to the project's success. Okay? So man, this thing is jumpy like. All right, so rule number 4, start small. Don't start with a large pull request with tons of new code. Might be a fantastic new feature for whatever open source project you want to do. You don't want to lead with that, right? Go help close some issues, right? Go find a small bug to fix. Start learning the process. Start small and then build up to the larger things, okay? So let's talk about Node specifically. If this thing will actually work. So here's some numbers that are actually quite amazing. Node has 22,000 total commits as of 3:30 in the afternoon yesterday. And I had to put the time in there, the exact time in there, because we're going up roughly between probably about 30 to 40 commits a day these days, right? It varies. Like right after a major release, everybody's kind of like takes a breather and it goes down. There was one day last month, I think we hit over 100 commits in a day. Okay? 488 releases over its lifetime, almost 2,000 contributors over its lifetime, 118 people with commit access. Okay? The GitHub organization has 137 different repositories with 564 people in the organization. And like I said earlier, we have 5 supported major releases right now. 4 is going to drop off. 6 is going into maintenance mode, which means it's only going to be supported for about another year. 8 is the active LTS. That's what everyone should be using. 9 is going to drop off in end of June. And 10 is going to become the new LTS in October, and I'll talk about that in a bit. When I released 10 on Tuesday, on that day we had just over 1 million downloads. It was 7+ TB. So if you're not familiar with the kibibyte, it's 2 to the 40th bytes times 7 in the one day. And that was fun. The server is just a massive amount of download. But of those over a million, 500,000 of those were Node 8, which is what we want to see. 250,000 were Node 6. Node 10 on day 1 had 13,000 downloads. On day 2 had 77,000 downloads. Okay? So it's a lot of activity going on, but people are right where we need them to be, which is on Node 8. That's the one that is that we want everybody to be focusing on. So I'm going to say Node is massive. It is a massive, massive project, and this doesn't even count the ecosystem modules, right? You've all seen the NPM charts, right? The hockey stick going up. I think they've had something like 10,000% growth over 4 years in terms of people using the registry, in terms of downloads. One guy at Nearform, I don't know if you know Macintosh, Daceboost, he alone maintains something like 780 modules, right? If you use Node in any way, you're using something he wrote, just period. How he does it, I have absolutely no idea. But just the size and scope of the ecosystem is just absolutely massive, which means there's a ton of work that needs to get done, right? This year alone, 3.5 months, we've had over 1,500 pull requests. That comes up to a little over 300 a month, right? All of these have to be looked at. All these have to be reviewed. This chart shows from the start of Node, back when Ryan Dahl first launched it, all the activity, right? It's the GitHub Pulse chart. This is just on the main repo. All of this activity here is since IO.js happened. The largest sustained period of activity in the project's lifetime, right? Here today, actually we've had 2 days where we hit 100 commits in a day. Prior to that, right when IO.js happened, there was a ton of commits that happened. But it's been a massive amount of work. Every single one of these pull requests has to be reviewed. They stay open for 48 to 72 hours on average. Some go longer. Some can go shorter if it's a smaller piece of work, like a simple doc change, that kind of thing. We can fast track it, but we have to all agree to fast track it. It's 48 hours during the week, 72 hours over the weekend. Node's core contributor base spans the globe. Right? There are so many different time zones involved that we have to keep things open in order to give people time to actually review it. If I open a pull request today, I'm not allowed to land it for 48 hours. I can't just go and say, okay, well, I'm a TSC member. I'm going to do this work and I'm going to land it. I cannot decide that myself, right? No matter how long you've been involved with the project, no matter how many commits you have or how long you've been involved, you still have to have your stuff reviewed just like everyone else. Right? And other people have to sign off on that change, right? So there are no benevolent dictators. There are no people that just get a free pass. Everybody's code gets checked following the exact same process. It's critical. Prior to IO.js happening, that was not happening. It was, you had a certain special group of people, they could do whatever they want. Other people, they'd bring changes, like, no, we don't want that. That's too small, or that's too big, or that's just not what we want. There was no rhyme or reason to it other than what a few individuals said. That process has changed entirely, right? So Semver patch, Semver major, have to have at least one sign off. And any of those 118 people that have the commit access can do the sign off. Semver majors must have at least 2 TSC members signing off. That's just to make sure there's extra eyes on something so we don't accidentally break stuff. Sometimes that doesn't happen. In Node 10, we have 3 reported regressions. 2 of them are oopsies on our part because we didn't review things properly. So those will be fixed. Those will be fixed next week. And both of those are things that were not marked Semver major that should have been marked Semver major. And what we do here is anything that even has the risk of breaking code is going to be marked Semver major. So even changing an error message, if we look at it and say there should be a period at the end of this error message, Semver major. Why? Because people parse the error messages to get detail. So if we make that change, it's going to break them. All right? And it can be rather obscure. So we take a very, very conservative approach on this. Now, Node 10 had over 300 Semver major changes. Right? That's a ton. right? Compared to other previous versions. Every single one of these had to be reviewed. And if you look at most of those are actually changes to the error messages. So I had to go through this review. And the day-to-day, when I get up in the morning, I open the GitHub. I have roughly about 500 GitHub notifications from the previous day on all the projects that I watch. And I do zero inbox on GitHub every day. So by the end of the day, I have no notifications open, right? I have the luxury of doing that because I do open source full time. That is my full-time job, right? Not everyone has that luxury, but that's something that I do. If I don't do that, I get completely buried. I took vacation last summer for a week, and I had something like 10,000 notifications. That was fun to catch up on. I wanted to go back on vacation. So everything has to be signed off. Every code change must pass CI and linting. The regular test suite contains a little over 2,200 unit tests, and our CI runs on 45 different OS and architecture variations. So if you do the math right, that's about 99,000 tests. Yeah, 99,000 tests every code change on all the different combinations. That does vary. Sometimes it's only about 35 different combinations only. So we might only run 66,000 tests. But every code change goes through this. It doesn't matter how small or how large it is. We will run this our CI environment usually probably around about 15 to 20 times a day. People will just be launching these off, and any one of those 118 people that have commit access can launch these. So that's another big part of what I do every day. Go through the issues, see if it's been run on CI, do a code review, sign off on it, go run the CI, look at the test results, see if it actually passed, see what fixes need to be made. And this is in addition to actually writing the code that I'm working on. Some for major changes are smoke tested against major ecosystem modules. We have a tool called Canary in the Gold Mine that we wrote. And yes, the original phrase is canary in the coal mine, but gold is more valuable and node modules are valuable. So this is the canary in the gold mine. And the whole thing is, if the canary dies, you got a problem. So if the test suite for these modules, we run about 100, I think it's about 150 of them right now. If those test suites fail, because of some change we made, the canary is dead, we have to go fix it. It's not a problem that we pass on to the ecosystem. We broke them, so we're going to try to fix it ourselves. Sometimes it's some major change, and we say that change has to be made. What we will do is we will go open pull requests proactively in those projects and help them fix their code. We just made some changes to the buffer constructor. Who's familiar with that? Okay. A few people. It's really super annoying. Don't use new buffer anymore because like 7 years ago we screwed up, right? You have to use like buffer alloc and buffer from. It's a better API. But there's so many modules out there that are using the old constructors that it's actually a problem. I spent 3 days helping Macintosh go through. I only got through like 50 of his modules. It took me 3 days to actually go through an open pull request just changing his buffer constructor usage, right? And there's tons of modules that are out there. But it's our responsibility to do that, our being Node Core, because we are the ones who screwed up. We're the ones that made the change. It's not fair for us to push it on the ecosystem and say, hey, we're changing, you go fix your stuff, right? So it's our responsibility, and that's what we are going out and doing, and we are helping people fix those things. Anytime we have a Semper major change, and we know that that change is going to break people, our standard practice is go help them fix it. Right? So that's another major part of the thing. Even doc changes are linted. They have to run through the CI. We use Markdown. We lint the Markdown. We lint the code that's in the Markdown. We actually run tests on the code in the Markdown to make sure it actually runs. So all of that has to be done. And then all of this is basically what we do on a daily basis. Every day we go through this list. All right? Major releases happen every 6 months. This is another part of what I do. So we release in April and we release in October. And the reason we did this was back when IOJS was happening, they were releasing just whenever. Right? Oh, major change, psh, major release. Companies that depend on Node were looking at that and saying, yeah, you've got to be joking. There's no way we're going to do that. Right? We actually have to have predictability in these releases. So we went out and we talked to a bunch of companies and we found out that the schedule that they're on is typically about an 18-month lead. And what that means is they'll pick up a new version of Node or whatever platform they're on. 18 months later is when they're okay to start looking at another version of it, right? So that's what we designed our long-term support cycle to be. We will release a new major, the even numbered majors. We'll let it stabilize for 6 months. And there's things that help us get regressions out, that help us make sure that it's actually stable. Then after that 6 months, it goes into active long-term support, which is 18 months, that cycle. Then after that, it goes into a 12-month maintenance. And the difference between active and maintenance is active, we will go out and we'll proactively backport changes to. So if there's anything that needs to be fixed, or like even new features that we want to add, we'll actively go off and do that during that 18 months. Nothing breaking, just additive stuff. During the maintenance cycle, we'll only do that on request. Right, so unless it's like a critical security bug, that kind of thing, but we really want those things just to kind of start fading out, right? So Node 4 is bye. We have to say goodbye to that one. Node 5 is already gone. Node 6 is maintenance now, or actually it goes into maintenance in 3 days for a year. Node 8 is the active one, and Node 10 will become active in October. Okay. When I say that I do this, I'm the one that's done every single one of these major releases, the OO releases, which takes roughly about 2 months process to go through. It's kind of shepherding things along, and invariably, you tell people, yeah, about a month till we're going to lock down and no more Semver majors. So a month till, people said, no, we have all these Semver majors that still have to go in. So say, okay, 2 weeks until the release, no more Semver majors. And so a week before the release, like, no, we have all these Semver majors we're going to get in. It's like, okay. So it's this process of basically shepherding things along, shepherding the changes along, and trying to get people to actually, to test and lock it down. So odd-numbered majors, a lot of people think that because they're not LTS, they're experimental. That's not true. They are just as stable as the even-numbered ones, that you can use them. They're just not going to be used, they're not going to be supported as long. That's the only difference, right? So Node 9, a lot of people are using it. We still had, several 100,000 downloads for Node 9, which is fine. It's only going to be supported until end of June, which means after June, if a security bug happens, right? Well, don't be on Node 9 anymore. Right. Even numbers released in April and our long-term support. Only the even-numbered ones go into LTS. Okay. Security taken very seriously. This one's important. We have a responsible disclosure process. Which means if you find a security bug, you report it to us using this security@nodejs.org address. It goes to, I think, 5 of us right now. I'm on the security triage team. A few other people are. We're the only people that see that report out of everyone else in core. There's only a handful that see that initial report. We do the initial triage to say yes or no whether it is a security issue or not. We use HackerOne, fantastic service if you're not familiar with it. It's a site specifically designed for this kind of process. We use that to triage, manage, and disclose issues. We do issue our own CVEs. Who knows what a CVE is? Okay, just a handful. CVE is basically a rating for how severe the security issue is. Right? Typically, they are issued by MITRE. It's just a formal process. Node became its own authority for CVEs, so we actually issue our own CVEs for ourselves and for the ecosystem. So if any module has a security issue, you can also use this address to report it. We will work with them on the disclosure process, and we will help them get a CVE assigned to it. The CVE gives you information, how easy is it to trigger this thing? What kind of security vulnerability is it? Just kind of some of the technical semantics of how it's triggered, what the exact vector is, that kind of thing. Responsible disclosure means we won't say anything about this publicly. I'm an employee of Nearform. I do not, and I'm on the security team, I do not even tell Nearform about security issues, right? I have a responsibility. I don't even share this with my own employer. Like if they will find out when everyone else finds out. That's responsible disclosure. We have a very small group of people that actually know that this thing is being worked on, that this is a vulnerability, because we don't want that getting out in the hands of people who will do bad things with it. So and we do this for the entire ecosystem. Okay. So one fun thing, through HackerOne, we now have a security bug bounty program. I think the minimum bounty is like $500 if you find a legitimate security issue. We take it through, and once we disclose it, as long as your employer is happy with you doing it and receiving it, then you can receive the bounty. So that's fun. We have one guy, this poor guy, worked, found some issues, can't receive the bounty because his employment contract says he can't. So, just if you're going to do that, make sure check with your employer first. Let's see. This is important. Code isn't the only way to contribute, and we're working on better ways of measuring this. Right now, we don't have great ways of measuring anything outside of code because GitHub does it for us. It tells us how many commits somebody has and that kind of thing. There's other ways of contributing. The community committee is specifically designed as kind of a sibling to the technical steering committee. They don't oversee any part of the actual technical project, but they do oversee everything involved with community outreach, right? Going out, running meetups, doing education. There's a certification program that's being worked on. There's a mentorship program that's being worked on. These are the folks that are very, very passionate about building and supporting the Node community. And that's where they get involved in this. So there are some people there that write code. There are some people there that don't write any code, but they're involved. The website, release, build, if you're a DevOps person. Do we have any DevOps people? We need DevOps people. Our poor build working group. They do a fantastic amount of work, but it's just the amount of work that they do supporting that CI infrastructure, the 45 different operating system and architectures, and they use Jenkins. Jenkins is so when I left IBM, uninstalling Nodes, Lotus Notes clients was like one of the career milestones, for me. It was like an amazing thing. But I also didn't have to use Jenkins anymore until I found out frickin' Node used it. I'm like, Jenkins is a horrible piece of software. I don't like it. Use something else. There's actually a lot there. It's good. I shouldn't badmouth another project, but it's good. They use, but we can always use more DevOps support, quite a bit there. I know that the Docker working group that we have is actually looking for some more people to get involved. So if you're big on Docker, the help repo is a repo that exists just for people to answer questions. Right. So instead of sending them off to people off to Stack Overflow or some other places that we don't necessarily control the environment, right? We're going to bring it. We set up an environment that is much more friendly, that follows our code of conduct, something that we can enforce. So people can come answer questions, have discussions in a way that is that we know is safer, right? And the mentorship program is just getting started. We're working on pairing up people who have a lot of experience with Node and a lot of experience with open source, with people from around the world who want to get started, who want to get involved, and have really no idea how to get started, right? We have some, we have example of this. We have two fantastic guys from Nigeria who are getting involved, who've never done open source before, who run their own local communities. They're coming in here to be able to plug. They want to plug into the larger ecosystem so they can plug their students into the larger ecosystem. It's absolutely fantastic, and just being a part of this is absolutely wonderful. Getting started. How are we doing on time? I'm talking pretty quick. I think we're good. Getting started. I recommend doing what I did, right? I mean, not opening a pull request, getting mad, and walking away. Hopefully, we're beyond that. Hopefully. But help triage issues, focus on what you know. We have people that come in, they're like, hey, this looks like a big, huge thing I can work on. I'm not really that familiar with it, but I'll work on it. And they work for a while, and then it doesn't land, and they get upset, and I'm not sure why. The problem is it was too big of a chunk, right? And it was something that they weren't necessarily familiar with, and weren't necessarily familiar with the context. Like I said, go back to the beginning. The people are the most important thing. More than the code, learn the people that you're going to be working with, right? And the process that they're following and kind of where they're coming from. Throwing a huge chunk of code without building trust first is a really good way of having that code ignored, right? So when you're coming into a project, work on building trust, and then do the things, the kind of the big things, more ambitious things later. We do have a good first issue label. It's not heavily used. We're working on it, so I think there's like 15 or 16 items under there right now. That's something that we need to get better at. And remember the rules I went through. Don't make assumptions. Don't ignore contributors. The people are the most important, and start small. One final thing, this is important. Open source is art. It is a craft. Like, yes, there is a science to it, right? But we're all practicing a craft. We're learning from each other. We're learning techniques. We're sharing. Practice the craft, right? Enjoy it. It is a way of expressing yourself, right? I express myself through code. I can't draw worth a damn. I mean, I can barely draw a stick figure, but I can write code really well, right? That is my art, right? And that's, hopefully all of you can see that as well, right? It's not just a job. It's not just something you're doing tediously, right, every day. You are creating art, right? But take care of yourself and avoid burnout, right? Take time off, right? Super, super important. Also important, if you're a company that benefits from open source, right, you have an obligation to support it, right? And support the people who create it, right? There are so many companies out there that use open source, and they view it as, hey, this is free. No, it's not free. There's companies that, it's a company in particular I know that they hired a guy for the open source software that he wrote. His day job is not working on that. They expect him to work on it on his own time. But they use that project. It's like, man, you need to find another job. Companies have an obligation to support the open source that they use, right? And this is super, super important, right? If you are in a company and you are benefiting from this, you cannot get away from this obligation. Okay? That's it. So.